With the next generation of video games comes the potential for cloud gaming to go mainstream. And to me, the service formerly known as Project xCloud is in the best position to become the greatest platform for it. I tested out Project xCloud last year when it was in preview, and I recommend you check out that video as the service has changed dramatically in that time. To help me with testing this open release of Xbox Cloud Gaming, which is still marketed as a beta, Microsoft sent along a Samsung Galaxy Note 20 and Razer Kishi controller. While at first glance, the Kishi seems inferior to a regular controller, I was surprised by how nice it felt. While the triggers and D-pad are definitely inferior to a standard Xbox controller, the thumbsticks felt on the same level. I plan on using my Elite Series 2 with the controller clip going forward, but the Kishi is much better than I would have ever given it credit for without going hands-on, and the fact it basically turns your Android phone into a Switch will always be dope. Now onto the cloud gaming experience itself. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the space that I'm going to play Xbox Cloud Gaming the most is my own apartment, so I thought I'd run the first test there. The minimum speed for Xbox Cloud Gaming is 10 megabits per second down, but I pay for a slightly faster speed than that. I actually pay for 1000 megabits per second with Verizon, and even though the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 is not hitting that upper threshold, it is way faster than it needs to be to Xbox Cloud Game. My game of choice for testing Xbox Cloud Gaming was Destiny 2, and there were a couple of reasons as to why. Firstly, on console and PC, it is a game with a high level of graphical fidelity, and I wanted to see how much of that was retained through the streaming experience. Secondly, it's one of the most competent first-person shooters ever made, and I wanted to see if that competency still shone through the streaming experience, or if it would be dampened by things like input latency. And thirdly, not only is Destiny 2 available through Xbox Game Pass and Cloud Gaming, it's available through Google Stadia and GeForce Now, as well as console and PC. So I was able to compare and contrast it against a wide variety of not only hardware options, but other streaming options. And here it is booting up on Game Pass. Now I do have to say, as fast as it is with the streaming, and obviously I'm not required to download it prior, it is slower booting it up on stream than it would be to sit down and play it at my Xbox One X if it was already downloaded, and forget about it if we're going to try and boot this up on an Xbox Series X. The hardware that is running at the server level for Microsoft is actually an Xbox One S, so it's actually going to be slower in terms of booting up and getting into everything than an Xbox One X, and definitely slower than the upcoming Xbox Series X. So as you can see, it's taking a little bit of time to boot. We're sitting here at a white screen currently, not a better experience than if I just booted it up on my big screen console, but this allows me to play Destiny 2 while my partner might be looking to watch something on TV. And even still, you can see the frame rate is not bad here. It does cap at 30 frames per second, again, because it is just the One S. It is not PC level, it is not a One X, so the frame rate is 30 frames per second, and the resolution is 720p currently. Again, Xbox Cloud Gaming is in beta right now. They are looking to increase the resolution and frame rate with future updates to Cloud Gaming, but currently that is the threshold for all games on the system. But now we're in menus, you can see me kind of moving around and selecting things, and it's happening pretty quickly. The latency is actually almost non-existent, I think. If you're a more casual gamer, you're not going to notice that at all. And as you can see here, the ship flying in, the 30 frames per second, it's actually kind of working wonders. Let's jump into some first-person action and see how that holds up. Now, the game performs very nicely, but again, it's only 720p and 30 frames per second, which isn't terrible on a phone, but is noticeable. It is nothing like playing it on a TV or a computer monitor with a controller or mouse and keyboard. And jumping out to show me playing with the controller, the latency, as you can see, is fine, it's good, it's serviceable. It allows you to do what you need to do, but again, it is nothing like sitting on a couch with a controller that is connecting directly to a console. For the next phase of testing, I wanted to boot up Destiny 2 on some of the other streaming services, so this is it running on Google Stadia. Now, as you know, Google Stadia is a dedicated streaming platform. Google isn't selling any consoles or hardware, so they're putting all their chips on the streaming side of things, which means that the computers on the server side are much more powerful than what the Xbox Cloud Gaming offers. So we are actually going to be able to get 1080p at 60 frames per second on the phone. And you can see even in just these menus how much more responsive, how much better this looks and feels than Xbox Cloud Gaming. And that's really noticeable when we jump into gameplay. Obviously, during gameplay, the quality difference between this and Game Pass cloud streaming is very noticeable with the 1080p 60 frames per second. I mean, let's just compare the two side by side here. There's no question. Not only is the game running better over Stadia, it's looking better, but there's actually another element that Stadia introduces because of its improved computing specs. This is the Game Pass footage here, and then we're going to transition to Stadia. And so not only does Stadia run better, it actually has a wider field of view, which is great for first-person shooters because it allows you to see more of the environment. It allows you to see, if you're playing against other players, more of your enemies. And so the game just hands down runs better on Stadia. Now we're taking a look at Destiny 2 running on GeForce Now, Nvidia's own streaming service. What Nvidia has done is give you the ability to stream games that you already own on PC through Steam or another gaming library and play select titles over the internet. So it's not like Stadia where you pay monthly subscription fees to it and then have to buy games on top, although Destiny 2 is included in the Pro subscription of Stadia. But you pay $5 a month and you can stream games that you already own on PC. There's also a free tier of GeForce Now that allows you to stream, but it limits the amount of time and supposedly the connectivity is not as good. You're not getting priority level streaming. Looking at the GeForce Now footage, you can tell that the 60 frames per second like Stadia has been retained from that service, but we are not getting the resolution that Stadia provides of 1080p. It's more closer to the 720p of Xbox Cloud streaming, so it kind of sits quality-wise in between the two. I will say, playing this on a phone with a screen this small, the frame rate jump is a much more appreciated boost than the resolution. The resolution is much less noticeable when you're holding it on a phone. You can definitely tell that Stadia looks better than either of the two services, but GeForce Now looks closer to Stadia than it does Xbox Game Pass because it has the 60 frames per second. The one thing about GeForce Now that is very annoying is because the game is streaming your Steam library. Basically, not only do you then have to connect to GeForce, but then it has to boot up Steam in big picture mode, and then you have to open up Destiny 2 through that. So there's a couple more steps involved to getting Destiny 2 running, and it's a little frustrating. It's definitely my least favorite of the three when it comes to just booting up the game itself. I think the best way to demonstrate the differences in quality is to do a blind test and see what you guys think. So here's Destiny 2 running on one of the services. Did you guess which one this is? That is GeForce Now. Here's the next service. Did you guess correctly? That's Game Pass. And then finally, here's Stadia. I'm imagining most of you got each of those correct, which means that there are significant visual differences between the three that make it very noticeable. But let's compare these streaming services to playing the game on console and on PC. And let's look at Stadia and see if we can tell the difference between a capture of the stream of Destiny 2 via Stadia versus console and PC. Here is Destiny 2 running on an Xbox One X. Now, it is important to note we are using direct feed capture via an Elgato 4K 60S Plus. On all of the streaming services that we've shown, we're capturing just the screen of the Android itself. So not only is the Xbox One X going to have better quality inherently, but the fact that we're capturing a direct feed is going to expand and improve that quality even further. So as we're putting this side by side with xCloud here, there's no competition. The Xbox One X looks better than it does on xCloud. But when we switch over to Stadia, yes, Stadia, again, because we're capturing just the Android screen, looks far worse put side by side, but it is running much smoother than the Xbox One X. Now, we do know that Destiny 2 on the Series X, the next-gen Xbox console, will be running at 4K 60, so it is going to match the frame rate of Stadia. But on current-gen Xbox, even the Xbox One X, the more powerful console, Stadia is just running better, and when we're on a smaller screen with our phones, that resolution advantage that the Xbox One X has is just kind of non-existent. So Stadia actually has the advantage here. But one of the cool things about streaming is obviously the ability to play it in situations where you can't have a console, much like this park. So I took the Note 20 out to a park near my apartment to test some of the speeds. Now, this phone is meant to have 5G, and I am meant to be covered by 5G, but I could only get LTE connectivity. But still, down, I was getting around 30 megabits per second, which for all of these streaming services should be more than enough. The real problem, though, came to upload speeds. Now, when playing the game, upload speeds are very important because that is going to dictate latency and controller input lag, and we're just sitting at 0 upload speed. We kind of get these fluctuations from time and again, and it's gonna jump in a second, I think, or maybe not. Yeah, like 0.3. It's really nothing. So let's see how this game runs over cellular in a less opportune environment. So both GeForce Now and Stadia just flat out wouldn't connect. When I tried to play the games, it just wouldn't work. But Game Pass did, because it has a lower threshold for what it needs in order to run because of its lower resolution and frame rate. But as you can see, because of the absolutely dire upload speeds, the input lag when trying to move the cursor is really bad, making it unplayable, and yeah, we just kind of dip in connectivity and are unable to actually play the game. I moved to another part of the park to see if I could get a better cell connection, but even booting it in Game Pass, it's just refusing to connect, and that's really the problem, is because cellular connectivity is so wishy-washy. One moment you can have amazing connectivity, amazing speeds, and the next you might have absolutely nothing. So in the wild, these streaming services aren't worth very much. But let's see if we can go somewhere else and see if we can get better cellular connectivity. So I ended up just going back to my apartment and sitting on my stoop, and you may be saying, Tom, you're cheating. And I'm saying I'm not cheating because I'm using cellular connectivity rather than my apartment's Wi-Fi. So let's see what kind of speeds we're getting. Yeah, again, it's the same as the park. It's actually a little bit faster here. We're nearing 40 megabits down. It's looking pretty good on the download side. I wonder how the uploads are going to be. And nothing. Zip. And I think the reason is the cellular companies are prioritizing download speeds because they're assuming you're just surfing the web or watching a video, which requires 0 or at least very little upload speed. They're not expecting you to try and play a game over streaming, and that's why we're having these upload speeds be this bad. And this time around, we actually got the game to run over cellular. Now, as you can tell, the input lag is less than ideal. It's much worse than if I was playing over Wi-Fi, but it is playable. It's probably about half a second here. You just kind of have to adjust. But of course, I'm just kind of running around. When we jump into actual gameplay, actual combat, you can see that the lag isn't that terrible. I'm still able to get shots off. I'm still able to dodge, still able to take out enemies. Something you'll also notice is that the quality is less than it is on the Wi-Fi. There's a little bit of screen tearing, there's a little less detail, the colors, everything looks a little bit more smudged, but on a phone screen, not terrible, actually very playable. Now we're jumping over to another streaming service. Can you guess which one this is? Is this GeForce Now or Stadia? It's actually GeForce Now. It's running very well. We're actually getting the frame rate. The resolution obviously isn't looking as good, but let's take a look at Stadia. Believe it or not, this is actually Stadia footage. It does have the better frame rate, but the resolution actually looks a lot worse than GeForce Now, whereas before Stadia over Wi-Fi was the king of resolution. And I think the reason being is Stadia actually has a lot more dynamic resolution shifting, meaning that the game and the service is able to identify how fast your speeds are and is able to adjust the resolution for that differentiator, whereas I think GeForce Now is kind of locked into either 1080 or 720 depending on speed. So Stadia actually performing worse here on cellular, but I do want to show this footage. This footage shows Stadia at its worst, where, I mean, it's just an unplayable mess. You wouldn't want to play like this under any conditions at all. And I just think that maybe the cellular service dropped a little bit during the Stadia playtest. I wonder if it just simply was worse cellular-wise, connectivity-wise, than when I was testing GeForce Now. But out of the three, in these conditions, GeForce Now seemed to be the winner, with Stadia coming in second place. Since conducting those Destiny 2 tests, I've gone ahead and tested a bunch of other games across all of the streaming platforms, and my ideas and conclusions about them have only further been cemented. I still think that Xbox Cloud streaming is the best streaming option available now, and that's for two reasons. Firstly, it's built for an internet that exists today, not one that might exist in 10 years' time, which is what Stadia is designed for. Yes, if you have great Wi-Fi speeds at home, and you're very lucky to be able to play Stadia games as they were meant to be played, but it's also the one that requires faster internet speeds. So with just how terrible, for the most part, cellular services in America, that promise of being able to take your games anywhere is just not fulfilled by Stadia. And then the other thing that makes Xbox Cloud streaming so desirable is it is only a sliver of what is on offer with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, if you pay that subscription, includes a wealth of first-party and third-party titles. It gives you multiplayer on Xbox, and it gives you EA Play now. So there is a really enticing reason to have an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription that has nothing to do with streaming, and that's why I can't recommend GeForce Now. Yes, you buy the games and you can play them on a dedicated PC if you want, but that $5 fee for GeForce Now, it only gets you streaming. There's no other benefit to it. So between the fact that cloud streaming for Xbox is the one that works the most consistently, and the fact that it is a portion of the reason as to why you'd want Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, I would have to say that Xbox Cloud streaming is the streaming service for gamers that they should invest in.